Hello, this is David with Everything Economics, and today we're going to talk about purchasing power parity, or just PPP. This is understanding international price comparisons and exchange rates. This is another key economic indicator uh, regarding for used in macroeconomics to compare exchange rates and uh, standard of living between countries. So let's get started. Well, what is the purchasing power parity? Well, the PPP is an economic theory that compares different countries' currencies through a basket of goods approach. It helps determines the relative value of currencies, and the PPP is useful in comparing economic productivity and living standards between countries. Um, so let's continue, and I'll give you a little more details. The concept and formula. Well, the core idea is that identical goods should have the same price in two different countries when expressed in a common currency. So, for example, if you buy, uh, let's say, a hamburger in the United States, then uh, theoretically, a hamburger in England should cost about the same price. Of course, we all know in reality prices will vary. But the idea is that using this formula, you can determine how the uh, um, different prices uh, are affected and how what is the comparison between countries' currencies and their standard of living. Don't worry if you don't understand, we'll give you some examples here in a minute. The exchange rate, this is a formula. The exchange rate is equal to the cost of basket in country A divided by the cost of basket in country B. And so here's an example. Let's say a burger costs $5 in the United States and 250 rupees in India. So if we use the formula, the PPP exchange rate would equal 250, which is for the rupees, divided by $5 equals 50 rupees per $1. If the actual exchange rate is 70 rupees per dollar, the Indian rupee is undervalued according to the PPP theory. So what you would do is you look at the cost of a burger you in the US, you compare it to the cost of a burger in India, you apply the formula, and then you look up the actual exchange rate and make a comparison. Okay, well, the applications of PPP, what is it used for? So it compares living standards across countries, measures economic productivity, assessing currency valuation and market efficiency, and it's used by the World Bank and the IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, for cross-country comparisons. Limitations. Well, like any good theory, it's not always perfect. So one limitation is non-tradable goods and services, which may differ across countries. So, for example, a uh, service in the United States may not be available in another country. And so you cannot actually trade that. And so you can't really make a good comparison. Transportation costs and trade barriers. So, for example, transportation costs, if you are, uh, when you ship products, uh, you have a cost associated with it. And if you're having to ship products around the world to, from say China to the United States, you have a cost associated with it, as opposed to shipping a product from say China to Japan, which is much, much closer. So it would have a much lower transportation cost. Trade barriers would be things like tariffs, um, or quotas, or any other rules or restrictions that prevent easy trade. Differences in product quality and consumer preferences. Certainly, American food in the United States is not necessarily liked all around the world. You have different tastes and different uh, uh, consumer consumptions in different countries. And so, what may be high in demand in the United States may not be high in demand in another country, and vice versa. So, for example, in uh, Asia, rice is a very common staple, but here in the United States, wheat is a very common staple. So you have different consumer preferences or taste. Also, product quality. Uh, um, if you have products that are made in uh, one country that may have a high standard of quality versus another country that might have lower standards. And so you have various um, quality of products. And so that's going to be another thing that the PPP won't account for. And then you have short-term fluctuations in exchange rates due to speculation. You'll always have speculators, and this may affect the short-term valuation, which in exchange rates, which may not give you an accurate measurement of how the exchange rate is doing and the comparison between countries. All right, the most popular index that is used for purchasing power parity is called the Big Mac Index. Big Mac for the Big Mac hamburger at McDonald's. One reason they chose McDonald's Big Mac is because McDonald's, of course, has restaurants all over the world, and Big Mac is sold practically all over the world, and so therefore it is a common product uh, that can be purchased just about any place that there is a McDonald's, and therefore uh, we or they use the Big Mac as a comparison. Uh, the Big Mac Index is an informal way to measure PPP between two currencies using the price of the McDonald's Big Mac. And so we have the Big Mac prices vary globally, indicating overvalued or undervalued currencies. The index is published by The Economist magazine, and its data can be found on various economic websites. So here I'm going to show you in the next slide uh, the most recent data from the Big Mac index, and we'll do a little comparisons between countries. Okay, so here's some data from StatBase, and this is the Big Mac Index data. So here we have a few countries: Switzerland, Uruguay, Costa Rica, United States, all the way down to Turkey. And these are comparisons of Big Macs in these different countries. So for example, let's just look at Switzerland. In Switzerland, a Big Mac costs 8 Swiss francs. And if we look at, of course, the United States, it costs $5.80. If we look at, let's say, Canada, in Canada, it's five Canadian dollars and 40 cents. So here you have the different prices, and so we're going to go ahead and figure out what the PPP, purchasing power parity between two countries, and try to determine if their exchange rate is overvalued or undervalued. So the first example I'm going to use is Switzerland. So Switzerland, uh, we know that it is 8 Swiss francs. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take 8 and we're going to divide it by the Big Mac price in the United States, which is 5.8. Okay, so we put that in the calculator and we're going to come up with around $1.38. So according to the PPP, this should be the exchange rate. Um, However, if you look up on the current exchange rate as of October 26, 2025, we see that 1 Swiss franc equals $1.26 US. So US dollars. So here we have one Swiss francs equals $1.26, and here we have, according to our Big Mac index, the exchange rate should be $1.38. So what does that tell us? That suggests that the Swiss franc, let me just write it out, Swiss franc, is overvalued compared to the US dollar. Now, this is not to say that it's a perfect, that it's perfectly true. It's just suggesting that it may be overvalued. There might be other factors that we're not aware of. As I mentioned in the limitations, there might be some short-term speculation going on. There may be other international factors that could be affecting it. But basically, based on this presently, it would appear that the Swiss franc is a little bit overvalued compared to the US dollar. All right, let's use another example. So the other example I'm going to use is Canada, since Canada has been in the news quite a bit this year, between Canada and America. So here we have in Canada, the Big Mac costs about $5.40. That's $5 Canadian. So I'm going to put Canadian dollar. So $5.40 Canadian, and the Big Mac in the United States costs about $5.80 USD. So we just put that in the calculator, and we find out that the exchange rate should be about 93 cents, 0.93. Now, if we go look on a website and find out what the current exchange rate is, well, according to a financial website, the current exchange rate is 1 Canadian dollar. Whoops. 1 Canadian dollar equals 0.71 or 71 cents USD. All right, so this would also suggest that the Canadian dollar is overvalued. So the Canadian dollar is overvalued. Again, only by a little bit, but according to our Big Mac index, the exchange rate should be 93 cents. We look on the exchange rate for the actual exchange rate according to the latest banking websites. The exchange rate is 71 cents. So this would suggest that the Canadian dollar is a little bit overvalued. But anyway, that gives you an idea. And of course, you can compare different countries. And then when you compare different countries, you can find out, well, why is something overvalued? Why is a particular currency overvalued or undervalued? And then you would have to do a little bit more research to figure it out. So that gives you an idea of how to use the Big Mac index. So let's go to our conclusion. Conclusion is PPP provides a long-term perspective on exchange rates. It's useful for comparing costs of living and economic well-being. It's not a perfect tool, but it is a key tool in global economics. It helps us to make comparisons between countries. So, all right. Well, thank you for your time, and stay tuned next week for another video on economics.